At the moment, it thinks queen f3, or knight takes f5, pardon me, bishop b5. But my opponent's move g4 is certainly very aggressive and very interesting, immediately challenging my knight on f5. So the top Rivka candidate here is 0.28. My opponent plays the move g4. And at the moment it's 0.00 if I take, apparently, with the pawn. But what I saw last night, it starts to creep up. Now it's 0.23 for white. It's at least as good as the other Ribka candidates. Forcing Ribka to have a look at this. It's almost as if black is forced in theory to try and maintain the balance, to take that pawn on g4 and ignore taking the pawn on h4. So this is the key variation given by Ribka for black to apparently survive this position. The queen coming to h8 and then to h5, which I find quite interesting. In the game, I just took on h4 because I thought that, I thought my opponent's blundered here because I've got bishop takes f4 and queen g5. And this comes back to the theme, we're playing against each other, not a big bear in the form of Ribka. And we're both making blunders. He actually told me he miscalculated this variation, as though he was going to play, knight g2 or something at a certain point, overlooking his knight and pre. So here, he just carries on by playing g takes h5, which is a slight inaccuracy. In this position, white can use the loss of the h-pawn as a beautiful pawn sacrifice. Just playing knight g2. It's amazing that all the pressure now exerted on the black king position in this variation. Say knight takes g2, king takes, and all of a sudden, there's the constant threat now of g takes h5, and also rook h1. And look at these bishops, potentially they're glaring down on the black king side. And black starts to be in real trouble here. For example, hg, queen g4, and you can start to see the deterioration of black's position, with this bishop still held prisoner behind this d5 pawn, this backward pawn. But white has now concrete threats like rook h1 and coming into h7. So the whole concept of g4 seems to have initially been above Ribka's horizon, but when it was actually played, then Ribka starts looking at it. It makes for a great pawn sack in this variation. But he played not knight g2 here, because he didn't really have that intention of just sacking the h-pawn. So he played, an accidental strong move. So g takes h4, and now bishop takes f4, but again, not really with the intention of having this knight so loose. He hadn't intended this knight retreat, but it is the strongest move here, Ribka first choice. Just exploit this pin and allow black to do bishop takes e3 and knight f3. It's inviting black to do that. And I felt uncomfortable now during the game. My attack is trying to make use of the f file, but without that dark squared bishop, and with white having the two bishops here, it's starting having a nasty resemblance to last Thursday when I got murdered by that GM, the Russian GM. So anyway, I take on e3, he takes, and now I play knight f3 check. And I was thinking, this isn't that great, because after king g2, so my knight is en prise now, and although I have this potential check and then knight f5, I really didn't like the resulting position. If his king goes to h1, he's going to use the g file. My king's in the firing line here. And in fact, Ribka totally agreed with this when I looked last night. If, say, check, and then king h1, say. Now let's say knight f5. Bishop takes f5. And here, it looks fairly dire. If g takes, check, king f7, say, it's very, grim. Bishop g5, say, the queen has to go back to h8, h6, I'm getting done over. And in fact, and that's with precise play. Within precise play, say I play king h8, I'm getting murdered almost immediately, going up to +4 for white now with rook g6. So, say queen f7, check. If king g8, now queen g1. So I'm really getting sliced down this g file. So this really has made my kind of attack, in inverted commas, backfire. And my dynamic prospects have been sucked out of the position with the absence of that dark squared bishop. So what did I do here, you think? And this is the point. We're not playing against the bear. We're playing against another human. And your human opponent, thankfully, can make mistakes. So we go back to this strategic trump card business. And, that was a little guide for me tactically as to, how can I solve some of the issues in this position. I thought if I could liberate this bishop on this diagonal, then maybe, even without my dark square bishop, I might have some exciting opportunities. So I actually play a very strange looking move. I wonder if you can guess it if I give you 5 seconds. It involves a knight. That's the clue. So 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, I played the crazy knight de5, so offering a whole knight. And here, if I was playing Rybka wouldn't care where that knight came from. It would be looking at this position cold, like Spock. This is the position. Forget the last move, the emotions, connected to the last move, any implication of the last move. It's looking at the whole position from scratch, as if it's never ever seen it before. And Rybka finds an absolutely crushing blow here, which was overlooked by both of us in post-mortem. We were looking at the move bishop f4 here, and apparently this seems to be better for black. Knight h4 check, king moves, and here knight takes d3, queen takes, and now queen f5, and apparently black is even slightly better here. But Rybka comes up with not only ignoring this knight sacrifice, but really to maximise the pressure on this pin and stop any cheeky queen moves at the same time. I wonder if you can actually spot the Rybka move to try and refute this knight sacrifice idea. If I give you 5 seconds here. Okay, the Rybka move is knight g5, and it seems to be curtains here for black. The knight's being lost brutally on the f-file simply. It just ends up to being, Rybka's boiled this down to a simple pin on the f-file. If I take, say, on d3, then here, well, white has to be careful not to routinely play queen takes d3, because then check, the king moves, and then knight f5. Instead, as Wishen's here again, Rybka's looking at the position as cold. Rook takes f3 here. As Wishen's just winning a whole piece basically. Knight f4 check, just bishop takes f4. I'll be a whole piece down for nothing. I could resign this. But thankfully, we don't play against Rybka. It will just destroy everyone outright in over the board. Anyway, so after knight d5, my opponent just took the knight and went, for the two knights variation, i.e. being 2 knights up. So rook takes f3. My opponent is 2 knights up here. But on the bright side, I've got this potential strategic trump card now, this long bishop, which you'll remember in a recent game I had another great bishop on that diagonal. So at least here, though, I'm losing, so I don't have any worry about. Well, in theory, I'm losing. If I drew this game, I wouldn't have been so gutted as the other one. So anyway, I played d4, and my opponent's still better here, but he blunders immediately here. He plays the less accurate move, but apparently now the advantage, according to Rybka, is just 0.41, less than half of a pawn. The best move was bishop takes d4. And after bishop takes d4, queen takes h5. We had looked at this in post-mortem ourselves. Knight g1. And it's interesting. It's not so clear-cut.